We are still on The Restaurant at the End of the Universe by Douglas Adams. I just picked up the next book of this series, so I'm pretty stoked. We are at chapter 17. So if you haven't seen any of the previous videos, I recommend going into the channel and looking them up. Also, this is a sequel to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I also read on this channel. So you should start there and work your way up. Some of you have been following the whole way. Shout out. My home skillets. So yeah. Where were we? Chapter 17. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy notes that Disaster Area, a plutonium rock band from the Gagrakaka mine zone. Gagrakaka. Sorry, that's a fun word. Gagrakaka. Mine zones. Sorry, I can be mature, I think. I'll try. Are generally held to be not only the loudest rock band in the galaxy, but in fact the loudest noise of any kind at all. Regular concert goers judge that the best sound balance is usually to be heard from within large concrete bunkers some 37 miles from the stage, while the musicians themselves play their instruments by remote control from within a heavily insulated spaceship, which stays in orbit around the planet, or more frequently around a completely different planet. Their songs are, on the whole, very simple, and mostly follow the familiar theme of boy being meets girl being beneath the silvery moon, which then explodes for no adequately explored reason. I love a good love song. Many worlds have now banned their act altogether, sometimes for artistic reasons, but most commonly because the band's public address system contravenes local strategic arms limitations treaties. This has not, however, stopped their earnings from pushing back the boundaries of pure hyper-mathematics, and their chief research accountant has been recently appointed professor of neo-mathematics at the University of Maximegalon, in recognition of both his general and his special theories of disaster area tax returns, in which he proves that the whole fabric of the space-time continuum is not merely curved, it is in fact totally bent. I'd have to agree, it does seem a bit bent. Also, I'm not advertising this, I just like it, okay? Throwing that out there. Ford staggered back to the table, where Zaphod, Arthur, and Trillian were sitting waiting for the fun to begin. "Gotta have some food," said Ford. "Hi, Ford," said Zaphod. "You speak to the big noise, boy." Ford waggled his head non-committally. "Hot Black? I sort of spoke to him, yeah. What'd he say?" "Well, not a lot, really. Yeah. He's spending a year dead for tax reasons. I've got to sit down." He sat down. The waiter approached. "Would you like to see the menu?" he said, "or would you like to meet the dish of the day?" "Huh?" said Ford. "Huh?" said Arthur. "Huh?" said Trillian. "That's cool," said Zaphod. "We'll meet the meat." Zaphod is like my spirit animal. I love him. In a small room, one of the arms of the restaurant complex, a tall, thin, gangling figure pulled aside a curtain, and oblivion looked him in the face. It was not a pretty face, perhaps because oblivion had looked him in it so many times. It was too long, for a start, the eyes too sunken and hooded, the cheeks too hollow, his lips too thin and too long, and when they parted, his teeth looked too much like a recently polished bay window. And the hands that held the curtain were long and thin too. They were also cold. They lay lightly along the folds of the curtain, and gave the impression that if he didn't watch them like a hawk, they would crawl away of their own accord and do something unspeakable in a corner. He let the curtain drop, and the terrible light that had played on his features went off to play somewhere more healthy. He prowled around his small chamber like a mantis contemplating an evening's praying. Finally, settling on a rickety chair by a trestle table, where he leafed through a few sheets of jokes, a bell rang. He pushed the thin sheaf of papers aside and stood up. His hands brushed limply over some of the 1,000,000 rainbow-colored sequins with which his jacket was festooned, and he was gone through the door. In the restaurant, the lights dimmed, the band quickened its pace, a single spotlight stabbed down into the darkness of the stairway that led up to the center of the stage. Up the stairs bounded a tall, brilliantly colored figure. He burst onto the stage, tripped lightly up to the microphone, removed it from its stand with one swoop of his long, thin hand, and stood for a moment, bowing left and right to the audience, acknowledging their applause and displaying to them his bay window. He waved to his particular friends in the audience, even though there weren't any there, and waited for the applause to die down. He held up his hand and smiled a smile that stretched not merely from ear to ear, but seemed to extend some way beyond the mere confines of his face. "Thank you, ladies and gentlemen," he cried. "Thank you very much. Thank you so much." He eyed them with a twinkling eye. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "the universe as we know it has now been in existence for over 170,000 million billion years, and will be ending in a little over half an hour. So welcome one and all to Milliways, the restaurant at the end of the universe." With a gesture, he deftly conjured another round of spontaneous applause. With another gesture, he cut it. "I am your host for tonight," he said. "My name is Max Cord-Lapline." Everybody knew this. His act was famous throughout the known galaxy, but he said it for the fresh applause it generated, which he acknowledged with a disclaiming smile and a wave. "And I've just come straight from the very, very other end of time, where I've been hosting a show at the Big Bang Burger Bar, where I can tell you we had a very exciting evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I will be with you right through this historic occasion, the end of history itself." Another burst of applause died away quickly as the lights dimmed down further. On every table, candles ignited themselves spontaneously, eliciting a slight gasp from all the diners and wreathing them in 1,000 tiny flickering lights and 1,000,000 intimate shadows. A tremor of excitement thrilled through the darkened restaurant as a vast golden dome above them began very, very slowly to dim, to darken, to fade. Max's voice was hushed as he continued. "So, ladies and gentlemen," he breathed, "the candles are lit. The band plays softly as the force-shielded dome above us fades into transparency, revealing a dark and sullen sky hung heavy with the ancient light of livid swollen stars. I can see we're all in for fabulous evening's apocalypse. Even the soft tootling of the band faded away as stunned shock descended on all those who had not seen this sight before. A monstrous grisly light poured in on them, a hideous light, a boiling, pestilential light, a light that would have disfigured hell. The universe was coming to an end. For a few interminable seconds, the restaurant spun silently through the raging void. Then Max spoke again. For those of you who have ever hoped to see the light at the end of the tunnel, he said, this is it. The band struck up again. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, cried Max. I'll be with you again in just a moment, and meanwhile I leave you in the very capable hands of Mr. Reg Nullify and his cataclysmic combo. Big hand, please, ladies and gentlemen, for Reg and the boys. The baleful turmoil of the skies continued. Hesitantly, the audience began to clap, and after a moment or so of normal conversation resumed. My dyslexia is still there, guys, okay? I'm just getting better at it. Max began his round of the table, swapping jokes, shouting with laughter, earning his living. A large dairy animal approached Zaphod Beeblebrox's table, a large, fat, meaty quadruped of the bovine type, with a large, watery eye, small horns, and what might almost have been an ingratiating smile on its lips. Good evening, it lowed and sat back heavily on its haunches. I am the main dish of the day. May I interest you in parts of my body? It harumphed and gurgled a bit, wriggled its hindquarters into a more comfortable position, and gazed peacefully at them. Its gaze was met by looks of startled bewilderment from Arthur and Trillian, a resigned shrug from Ford Prefect, and naked hunger from Zaphod Beeblebrox. Something off the shoulder, perhaps, suggested the animal, braised in white wine sauce. Your shoulder, said Arthur in a horrified whisper. But naturally, my shoulder, sir, mooed the animal contentedly. Nobody else's is mine to offer. Zaphod leapt to his feet and started prodding and feeling the animal's shoulder appreciatively. Or the rump is very good, murmured the animal. I've been exercising it and eating plenty of grain, so there's a lot of good meat there. It gave a mellow grunt, gurgled again, and started to chew the cud, and swallowed the cud again. Gross. Or a casserole of meat, perhaps, it added. You mean this animal actually wants us to eat it? Whispered Trillian to Ford. Me? Said Ford with a glazed look in his eyes. I don't mean anything. That's absolutely horrible, exclaimed Arthur. The most revolting thing I've ever heard. What's the problem, Earthman? Said Zaphod, now transferring his attention to the animal's enormous rump. I just don't want to eat an animal that's standing there inviting me to, said Arthur. It's heartless. Better than eating an animal that doesn't want to be eaten, said Zaphod. That's not the point, Arthur protested. Then he thought about it for a moment. All right, he said, maybe it is the point. I don't care. I'm not going to think about it now. I'll just, The universe raged about him in its death throes. I think I'll just have a green salad, he muttered. May I urge you to consider my liver? Asked the animal. It must be very rich and tender by now. I've been force-feeding myself for months. A green salad, said Arthur emphatically. A green salad, said the animal, rolling his eyes, disapproving at Arthur. Are you going to tell me, said Arthur, that I shouldn't have a green salad? Well, said the animal, I know many vegetables that are very clear on that point, which is why it was eventually decided to cut through the whole tangled problem and breed an animal that actually wanted to be eaten, and was capable of saying so clearly and distinctly. And here I am. It managed a very slight bow. Glass of water, please. Look, said Zaphod, we want to eat, don't we? We don't want to make a meal of the issues. 4 rare steaks, please, and hurry. We haven't eaten in 576,000 million years. The animal staggered to its feet. It gave a mellow gurgle. A very wise choice, sir, if I may say so. Very good, it said. I'll just nip off and shoot myself. He turned and gave a friendly wink to Arthur. That's my friendly wink. Don't worry, sir. It'll be very humane, he said. It waddled off unhurriedly to the kitchen. A matter of minutes later, the waiter arrived with 4 huge steaming steaks. Zaphod poured Wolf straight into them without a second's hesitation. Trillian paused, then shrugged and started into hers. Arthur stared at his, feeling slightly ill. Hey, Earthman, said Zaphod with a malicious grin on the face that wasn't stuffing itself. What's eating you? And the band played on. All around the restaurant, people and things relaxed and chatted. The air was filled with talk of this and that, and with a mingled sense of exotic plants, extravagant foods, and insidious wines. For an infinite number of miles in every direction, the universal cataclysm was gathering to a stupefying climax. Glancing at his watch, Max returned to the stage with a flourish. And now, ladies and gentlemen, he beamed. Is everyone having one last wonderful time? Yes, called out the sort of people who call out yes when comedians ask them if they're having a wonderful time. That's wonderful, enthused Max. Absolutely. If I can turn this page. We got this. Doop, doop, doop. Okay. Absolutely wonderful. And as the photon storms gather in the swirling crowds around us, preparing to tear apart the last of the red-hot suns, I know you're all going to settle back and enjoy with me what I know we will all find an immensely exciting and terminal experience. He paused. He caught the audience with a glimmering eye. Believe me, ladies and gentlemen, he said, there's nothing penultimate about this one. He paused. Tonight his timing was immaculate. Time after time he had done this show, night after night. Not that the word night had any meaning here. At the extremity of time, all there was the endless repetition of the final moment, as the restaurant rocked slowly forward over the brink of time's farthest edge and back again. This night was good, though. The audience was writhing in the palm of his sickly hand. His voice dropped. They had to strain to hear him. This, he said, really is the absolute end, the final chilling desolation in which the whole majestic sweep of creation becomes extinct. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the proverbial it. He dropped his voice, still lower in the stillness. A fly would not have dared clear its throat. After this, he said, there's nothing Void, emptiness, oblivion, absolutely nothing. His eyes glittered again. Or did they twinkle? Nothing. Except, of course, for the desserts and a fine selection of Aldebaran liqueurs. The band gave him a music sting. He wished they wouldn't. He didn't need it. Not an artist of his caliber. He could play the audience like his own musical instrument. And they were laughing with relief. I'll set you yonder. Where was I? He followed on. And for once, he cried cheerily, you don't need to worry about having a hangover in the morning because there won't be any more mornings. He beamed at his happy, laughing audience. He glanced up at the sky, going through the same death routine every night, but his glance was only for a fraction of a second. He trusted it to do its job, as one professional trusts another. And now, he said, strutting about the stage, at the risk of putting a damper on the whole wonderful sense of doom and futility here this night, I would like to welcome a few parties. He pulled a card from his pocket. Do we have, he put up a hand to hold back the cheers, do we have a party here from the Zenselquazure Flammarion Bridge Club from beyond the void of Cavarn? Are they here? A rousing cheer came from the back, but he pretended not to hear. He peered around, trying to find them. Are they here? He asked again to elicit a louder cheer. He got it, as he always did. Ah, there they are. Well, last bids, lads, and no cheating. Remember, this is a very solemn moment. He lapped up the laughter. And do we have a party of minor deities from the halls of Asgard? Away to his right came a rumble of thunder, lightning arced across the stage. A small group of hairy men with helmets sat looking very pleased with themselves and raised their glasses to him. Has-beens, he thought to himself. Careful with that hammer, sir, he said. They did their trick with the lightning again. Max gave them a very thin-lipped smile. And thirdly, he said, a party of young conservatives from Series B. Are they here? A party of smartly dressed young dogs stopped throwing rolls at each other and started throwing rolls at the stage. They yapped and barked unintelligibly. Yes, said Max. Well, this is all your fault. You realize that? And finally, said Max, quieting the audience down and putting on his solemn face. Finally, I believe we have with us here tonight a party of believers, very devout believers, from the Church of the Second Coming of the Great Prophet Zarquon. There were about 20 of them sitting right out on the edge of the floor, aesthetically dressed, sipping mineral water nervously and staying apart from the festivities. They blinked resentfully as the spotlight was turned on them. There they are, said Max, sitting there, patiently. He said he'd come again, and he's kept you waiting a long time, so let's hope he's hurrying, fellas, because he's only got 8 minutes left. The party of Zarquon's followers sat rigid, refusing to be buffeted by the waves of uncharitable laughter which swept over them. Max restrained his audience. No, but seriously though, folks, no offense meant. No, I know we shouldn't make fun of deeply held beliefs. So I think a big hand, please, for the great prophet Zarquon. And the audience clapped respectively. Wherever he's gone to, He blew a kiss to the stony-faced party and returned to the center of the stage. He grabbed a tall stool and sat on it. "It's marvelous, though," he rattled on, "to see so many of you here tonight." "No, isn't it, though?" "Yes, absolutely marvelous. Because I know that so many of you come here time and time again, which I think is really wonderful. To come and watch this final end of everything, and then return home to your own eras and raise families, strive for new and better societies, fight terrible wars for what you know to be right. It really gives one hope for the future of all lifekind. Except, of course," he waved at the blitzing turmoil above and around them, "that we know it hasn't got one." Arthur turned to Ford. He hadn't quite got this place worked out in his mind. "Look, surely," he said, "if the universe is about to end, don't we go with it?" Ford gave him a three-pan galactic gargle blaster look. "In other words, a rather unsteady one." "No," he said. "Look," he said, "as soon as you come into this dive, you get held in this sort of amazing force-shielded temporal warp thing, I think." "Oh," said Arthur. He turned his attention back to the bowl of soup he'd managed to get from the waiter to replace his steak. "Look," said Ford, "I'll show you." He grabbed at a napkin off the table, fumbled hopelessly with it. "Look," he said, "imagine this napkin, right, as a temporal universe, right? And this spoon as a transductional mode in the matter curve." It took him a while to say this last part, and Arthur hated to interrupt him. "That's the spoon I was eating with," he said. "All right," said Ford. "Imagine this spoon." He found a small wooden spoon on a tray of relishes. "This spoon? I found it rather tricky to pick up. No, better still, this fork." "Hey, would you let go of my fork?" snapped Zaphod. "All right," said Ford. "All right, all right. Why don't we just say this wine glass is a temporal universe?" "What? The one you've just knocked to the floor? Did I do that?" "Yes." "All right," said Ford. "Forget that. I mean, look, do you know how the universe actually began for a kickoff?" "Probably not," said Arthur, who wished he'd never embarked on any of this. "All right," said Ford. "Imagine this, right? You get this bath, right? A large round bath, and it's made of ebony." "Where from?" said Arthur. "Herod's was destroyed by the Vogons." "Doesn't matter. So you keep saying. Listen." "All right. You get this bath, see? Imagine you've got this bath, and it's ebony. It's conical." "Conical?" said said Arthur, sorry. "What sort of..." "Shh," said Ford. "It's conical. So what you do is, you see, you fill it with fine white sand, all right? Or sugar. Fine white sand and or sugar. Anything. Doesn't matter, sugar's fine, and when it's full, you pull the plug out. Are you listening?" "I'm listening." "You pull the plug out, and it all just twirls away. You see, it twirls away out of the plug hole." "I see." You don't see at all. I haven't got to the clever bit yet. You want to hear the clever bit? Tell me the clever bit." "I'll tell you the clever bit." Ford thought for a moment, trying to remember what the clever bit was. "The clever bit," he said, "is this. You film it happening." "Clever," said Arthur. "You get a movie camera and you film it happening." "Clever? That's not the clever bit. This is the clever bit. I remember now that this is the clever bit. The clever bit is that you then thread the film in the projector backwards. Backwards? Yes. Threading it backward is definitely the clever bit. So then you just sit and watch it, and everything just appears to spiral upward out of the cloak hole and fill the bath, see? And that's how the universe began, is it? Said Arthur. No, said Ford. But it's a marvelous way to relax. He reached for his wine glass. Where's my wine glass? He said. It's on the floor. Ah. Tipping back his chair to look for it, Ford collided with a small green waiter who was approaching the table carrying a portable telephone. Ford excused himself to the waiter, explaining that it was because he was extremely drunk. The waiter said that was quite all right and that he perfectly understood. Ford thanked the waiter for his kind indulgence, attempted to tug his forelock, missed by 6 inches, and slid under the table. Mr. Zaphod Beeblebrox? Inquired the waiter. Yeah, said Zaphod, glancing up from his third stick. There's a phone call for you. What? A phone call, sir. For me? Here? Hey, but who knows where I am? One of his minds raced. The other dawdled lovingly over the food it was still shoveling in. Excuse me if I carry on, won't you? Said his eating head, and carried on. There were now so many people after him, he'd lost count. He shouldn't have made such a conspicuous entrance. Hell, why not, though? He thought. How do you know you're having fun if there's no one watching you have it? Maybe somebody here tipped off the galactic police, said Trillian. Everyone saw you come in. You mean they want to arrest me over the phone? Said Zaphod. Could be. I'm a pretty dangerous dude and when I'm cornered. Yeah, said a voice from under the table. You go to pieces so fast people get hit by the shrapnel. Sorry, that was good. Hey, what is this, Judgment Day? Snapped Zaphod. Do we get to see that as well? Asked Arthur nervously. I'm in no hurry, muttered Zaphod. Okay, so who's the cat on the phone? He kicked forward. Hey, get up there, kid, he said to him. I may need you. I am not, said the waiter. Personally acquainted with the metal gentleman in question, sir? Metal? Yes, sir. Did you say metal? Yes, sir. I said that I am not personally acquainted with the metal gentleman in question. Okay, carry on. But I am informed that he has been awaiting your return for a considerable number of millennia. Seems you left here somewhat precipitately. Left here? Said Zaphod. Are you being strange? We only just arrived here. Indeed, sir, persisted the waiter doggedly. But before you arrived here, sir, I understand that you left here. Zaphod tried this one in his brain, then in the other. You were saying, he said, that before we arrived here, we left here. This is going to be a long night, thought the waiter. Precisely, sir, he said. Put your analyst on danger money, baby, advised Zaphod. No, wait a minute, said Ford, emerging above table level again. Where exactly is here? To be absolutely exact, sir, it is a Frogstar World B. But we just left there, protested Zaphod. We left there and came to the restaurant at the end of the universe. Yes, sir, said the waiter, feeling that he was now into the home stretch and running well. The other one was constructed on the ruins of the other. Or the one was constructed on the ruins of the other. Oh, said Arthur brightly. You mean we've traveled in time, but not in space. Listen, you semi-evolved simian, cut in Zaphod. Go climb a tree, will you? Arthur bristled. Go bang your heads together, Four Eyes, he advised Zaphod. No, no, the waiter said to Zaphod. Your monkey has got it right, sir. Arthur stuttered in a fury and said nothing opposite or indeed coherent. You jumped forward, I believe, 576,000 million years while staying in exactly the same place, explained the waiter. He smiled. He had a wonderful feeling that he had finally won the odds against what had seemed to be insuperable odds. That's it, said Zaphod. I got it. I told the computer to send us to the nearest place to eat, and that's exactly what it did. Give or take 576,000 million years or whatever. We never moved. Neat. They all agreed this was very neat. But who, said Zaphod, is the cat on the phone? Whatever happened to Marvin? Said Trillian. Zaphod clapped his hands to his head. The paranoid android! I left him moping about on Frogstar World Beat. When was this? Well, 576,000 million years ago, I suppose, said Zaphod. Hey, hand me the rat prod plate, Captain. The little waiter's eyebrows wandered about his forehead in confusion. I beg your pardon, sir, he said. The phone, waiter, said Zaphod, grabbing it off him. Shh! You guys are so unhip, it's a wonder your bums don't fall off. Indeed, sir. Hey, Marvin, is that you? Said Zaphod into the phone. How you doing, kid? There was a long pause before a thin, low voice came up the line. I think you ought to know I'm feeling very depressed, it said. Zaphod cupped his hand over the phone. It's Marvin, he said. Hey, Marvin, he said into the phone again. We're having a great time. Food, wine, and a little personal abuse, and the universe going boom. Where can we find you? Again the pause. You don't have to pretend to be interested in me, you know, said Marvin at last. I know perfectly well I'm only a menial robot. Okay, said Zaphod. But where are you? Reverse primary thrust, Marvin. That's what they say to me. Open airlock number 3, Marvin. Marvin, can you pick up that piece of paper? Can I pick up that piece of paper? Here I am, brain the size of a planet, and they ask me to. Yeah, sympathized Zaphod hardly at all, but I'm quite used to being humiliated, droned Marvin. I can even go and stick my head in a bucket of water if you like. Would you like me to go and stick my head in a bucket of water? I've got one ready. Wait a minute. Hey, Marvin, interrupted Zaphod, but it was too late. Sad little clunks and gurgles came up the line. What's he saying? Asked Trillian. Nothing, said Zaphod. He just phoned to wash his head at us. There, said Marvin, coming back to the line, bubbling a bit. I hope that gave satisfaction. Yeah, said Zaphod. Will you please tell us where you are? I'm in the parking lot, said Marvin. The parking lot, said Zaphod. What are you doing there? Parking cars. What else does one do in a parking lot? Okay, hang in there. We'll be right down. In one moment, Zaphod leapt to his feet, threw down the phone, wrote Hot Black Desiato on the bill. Come on, guys, he said. Marvin's in the parking lot. Let's get on down. What's he doing in the parking lot? Asked Arthur. Parking cars. What else, dum-dum? But what about the end of the universe? We'll miss the big moment. I've seen it. It's rubbish, said Zaphod. Nothing but a knob gib. A what? The opposite of a big bang. Come on, let's get zappy. Few of the other diners paid them any attention as they weaved their way through the restaurant to the exit. Their eyes were riveted on the horror of the skies. An interesting effect to watch for, Max was telling them, is in the upper left-hand quadrant of the sky, where if you look very carefully, you can see the star system Hastromel boiling away into the ultraviolet. Anyone here from Hastromel? There were one or two slightly hesitant cheers from somewhere in the back. Well, said Max, beaming cheerfully at them, it's too late to worry about whether you left the gas on now. Chapter 18. The main reception foyer was almost empty, but Ford nevertheless weaved his way through it. Zaphod grasped him firmly by the arm and maneuvered him into a cubicle standing to one side of the entrance hall. What are you doing to him? asked Arthur. Sobering him up, said Zaphod, and pushed a coin into the slot. Lights flashed, gases whirled. Hi, said Ford, stepping out a moment later. Where are we going? Down to the parking lot. Come on. What about the personnel time teleports? Said Ford. Get us straight back to the Heart of Gold. Yeah, but I've pulled on that ship. Zonawhoop can have it. I don't want to play his games. Let's see what we can find. Sirius Cybernetics Corporation Happy Vertical People Transporter took them down deep into the substrata beneath the restaurant. They were glad to see it had been vandalized and didn't try to make them happy as well as take them down. At the bottom of the shaft, the elevator doors opened and a blast of cold, stale air hit them. The first thing they saw on leaving the elevator was a long concrete wall with over 50 doors in it, offering lavatory facilities, for all of 50 major life forms. Nevertheless, like every parking lot in the galaxy throughout the entire history of parking lots, this parking lot smelled predominantly of impatience. They turned a corner and found themselves on a moving catwalk that traversed a vast cavernous space that stretched off into the dim distance. It was divided off into bays, each of which contained a spaceship belonging to one of the diners upstairs. Some smallish and utilitarian mass production models, others vast shining limo ships, the playthings of the very rich. Zaphod's eyes sparkled with something that may or may not have been avarice as he passed over them. In fact, it's best to be clear on this point. Avarice is definitely what it was. There he is, said Trillian. Marvin, down there. They looked where she was pointing. Dimly they could see a small metal figure listlessly rubbing a small rag on one remote corner of a giant silver sun cruiser. At short intervals along the moving catwalk, wide transparent tubes led down to floor level. Zaphod stepped off the catwalk into one of these and floated gently downward. The others followed. Thinking back to this later, Arthur Dent thought it was the single most enjoyable experience of his travels in the galaxy. Hey, Marvin, said Zaphod, striding over toward him. Hey, kid, are we pleased to see you? Marvin turned, and insofar as it is possible for a totally the inert metal face to look reproachful, this is what it did. "No, you're not," he said. "No one ever is." "Suit yourself," said Zaphod, and turned away to ogle the ships. Ford went with him. Only Trillian and Arthur actually went up to Marvin. "No, we really are," said Trillian, and patted him in a way that he disliked intensely. "Hanging around waiting for us all this time." 576,000,000,000, 3,579 years, said Marvin. "I counted them." "Well, here we are now," said Trillian. Dang, I don't want to yawn. Feeling quite correctly, in Marvin's view, that it was a slightly foolish thing to say. The first 10 million years were the worst, said Marvin, and the second 10 million years, they were the worst too. The third 10 million, I didn't enjoy at all. After that, I went into a bit of a decline. He paused just long enough to make them feel they ought to say something, and then interrupted. "It's the people you meet in this job that really get you down," he said, and paused again. Trillian cleared her throat. "Is that—" "The best conversation I had was over 40 million years ago," continued Marvin. Again the pause. "Oh, and that was with a coffee machine." He waited. You don't like talking to me, do you?" said Marvin in a low, desolate tone. Trillian talked to Arthur instead. Farther down the chamber, Ford Prefect had found something of which he very much liked the look. Several such things, in fact. "Zaphod," he said in a quiet voice, "just look at some of these little star trolleys." Zaphod looked and liked. The craft they were looking at was, in fact, pretty small but extraordinary, and very much a rich kid's toy. It was not much to look at. It resembled nothing so much as a paper dart about 20 feet long, made of thin but tough metal foil. At the rear end was a small horizontal two-man cockpit. It had a tiny Charm drive engine, which was not capable of moving it at any great speed. The thing it did have, however, was a heat sink. The heat sink had a mass of some 2,000 billion tons and was contained within a black hole mounted in an electromagnetic field situated halfway along the length of the ship. In this heat sink, okay, I'm done yawning. This heat sink enabled the craft to be maneuvered to within a few miles of a yellow sun, there to catch and ride the solar flares that burst out from its surface. Flare riding is one of the most exotic and exhilarating sports in existence, and those who can dare and afford to do it are among the most lionized men in the galaxy. It is also, of course, stupefyingly dangerous. Those who don't die riding invariably die of sexual exhaustion at one of the Daedalus Club's après-flare parties. I'm going to stop here because your boy is sleepy. I was yawning. However, let's see. Yeah, we'll be starting halfway through chapter 18 on the next reading. I love you guys. Namaste. Thank you for sitting here with me and reading books with me. I will see you soon. Bye.